Any other questions regarding that? No? Okay. I'm sorry, yeah?
Not sort of a tangential thing to the DCCs, but licensing-wise, right now, for some of the DCCs, it's not very clear whether you're, in some cases it's maybe clear that you're not allowed to use the interactive DCC in the cloud on a virtual desktop. I'd be curious to hear sort of like what you guys' consensus is for that problem and what we think we can do about it. I mean, to me, it doesn't seem like there's a future where they can sort of stick with their current licensing model, but I'm sure it has to go through lawyers and whatnot. And I feel like every time I mention it to somebody, it's like no one really has any answers, and I don't know if anyone's pushing the buttons up at Autodesk to get them to work on it, and if the message is clear that we want it.
So I will put my studio hat on and say I've been very bold to say this is what we want to do. And one of the reasons why, so Jellyfish used Microsoft Azure for pretty much, well, almost all of its cloud compute side of things, but Microsoft has been very good in that they actually have brokered a deal with Autodesk to get Versatile Maya licenses, Arnold, and V-Ray licenses more coming soon. So if we want to do like all of a sudden burst rendering, if we need literally like, I don't know, 1 million Arnold license or whatever, that will just show up as a line item on our bill at the end of the month. And so I think, like, it's a sign that I think, like, the vendors are they totally get that this is the way that, it's just the way that production is going to be done in the future, really. And so I think, and there might be a fear that if they don't update their EULA and the licensing perspective, that studios may favor another solution where they can consume those services in that way.
Yeah, there are some real technical hurdles in dealing with that, because we've been looking at this across at least the M&E community, if not the broader software market. That some vendors that rely on things like an iLock presents a real problem in how do you instantiate that in the cloud. Creative suites where they're relying on a licensed server that has to be deployed somewhere on your network. Or even plugins that go into those broader suites. That especially for these companies that are 2 or 3 people that are designing this stuff, that's a pretty tall ask for them to redefine how their licensing and payment model works and figure out how to do that in a microservice or in a pay-as-you-go model. The bigger ones is comparatively easier for them to do it. Autodesk, Avid is working on it, but Avid's been working on this for 2 years. And they're still at it. So there's a certain amount of help that we as the platform provider can give them, but it's a fundamental shift that everybody has to take into account. And there's patterns and practices that you can use of deploy your license server in the cloud or have a VPN back to your on-prem network that at least allows the licenses to go back and forth. But in some cases, that can end up being very expensive, because as you're spinning up 1 million cores and you need 1 million licenses of something and it's a perpetual license, that'll put you out of business.
Yeah, I think general progress is being made, but it's not going to happen overnight. But like it's.
Yeah.
But
what do you feel like is the best sort of course of action for people to sort of put their hat in the ring and say, this is what we want? I mean, is there any kind of decentralized effort to sort of map out what would work and kind of get, like if you were to do I'm not saying anyone has to do this, but like if somebody were to organize a poll or something that says, we all want this, so that it's clear what the message is from the industry. Because I think it is a complicated thing. There's metered licensing, there's lots of different costs and limitations, and there's just the legalese of it. It'd be nice to come up with some first steps that just get us into the clear to take the first steps into the cloud without any uncertainty.
There are actually a couple of vendors that are tackling that. One was Nibble Collective. They actually just got bought by AWS. And there's another one called BoF. And what they do is they provide this centralized virtual workflow, and it actually uses Teradici as the front end to that. But they go and they either broker that licensing with the software vendors that they're going to run on that VM, or they help with that micro licensing. So they've got a model where you as an artist can just go in and say, I need a workstation, needs to have Maya, it needs to have Nuke, it needs to have Media Composer on it, whatever. And then they provision that for you within their environment, and you don't have to worry about the licensing. It's just a pay-as-you-go model that's it's got this stack of creative stuff that I need to do my job. It's going to cost me $49.95 a month or however much. And then you're off to the races, and then when you're done using it, you just, you turn it off. And then, as those platforms get built out and they plug into the render capacity in the cloud, so that, you build your model, and then, you need to do your scene render, and it just works seamlessly from that workflow all the way out to, pushing out the final scene files. Those capabilities are coming, but they're,
I think that a third party needs to step in and really kind of be the stepping stone that still operates in the business model of the current application for the application vendor itself, and say, I'm going to take on the risk. The application vendor isn't going to move to where we need them to go, but we'll step in, we'll take on the risk, we'll align with their existing business models, and then we'll offer a consumption-based strategy, to our clients, like what a Nimble Collective did. I think for us, we've been trying to figure out how can we do that within an environment that is more studio-friendly versus freelance-friendly. But I think that I'd love to work on that with you, actually.
It should be said that the Foundry, they're also kind of making a stab at, paying a monthly fee for all of the Foundry products, and then you work in that, environment, and then when you're done for that month, it just counts your subscription. So
For me, I'd love to just be able to use our licenses over VPN and not be compliance with the AG.
Yeah.
Like a great step one.
Yeah, I mean, basically, the only thing we probably suggest here is talk to the vendors that you're currently using to see basically, like we're spending money basically with you. We're buying these licenses instead of basically buying a Dell Blade Center or whatever else. We want to use those same licenses that we bought and use them on cloud number one or something. So I mean, the only thing I'd probably suggest is basically that feedback, because I mean, you're still paying for those licenses. Yeah.
I mean, that's been a good question for a couple of years, and I've seen the change. Avid's a great example where, it's cloud licensing they have as a SKU. 2 years ago, they had nothing like that. But and the other big Autodesk and Adobe and these folks, they hear the question, but I think they will change their business model based on ground up. They're not getting strategically going to leap out ahead, given they have a practice. So I think the more often you hammer on them, the faster they'll change.
Yeah.
And any last questions at all?
Maybe a really small thing, but it's more just like who all is using microservices in their pipeline? Not necessarily cloud running, but just like microservices.
Yeah, a few. Cool. All right. Well, I think we may be out of time. Is that right? Oh, sorry. Okay. Sorry, I thought it was. I thought we were over at 1:30. So my fault. All right. Cool. Well, but maybe a follow up on the microservices. An interesting debate, and obviously, I mean, yeah, it'd be great to keep the questions coming, guys. Is that with microservices and cloud and all the rest of it, how do you think it will aid basically in different studios working together collaboratively on projects? So if we have two studios kind of embracing like a cloud native approach to pipelines, do you think that's going to create the opportunity to work together more?
Yeah, we have and Joe talked about this a little bit, but we have a client who's a large studio that's building a very large production, and they've asked us to design a pipeline to allow sharing between the vendors much tighter than it is right now. And the whole thing is being built around a single cloud provider. And we're giving cloud access to everybody's vendors directly, and they're going to work on their systems, but they're going to put the file into the cloud. That file will be available within the major cloud. The studio has local systems that will download as needed to their systems using a really great vendor, hardware vendor, and it's all tied together around one of the large production platforms that's in the cloud, and it's all available to every vendor. All the assets are available to all the vendors all the time, so we use an asset manager to allow one vendor to request an asset from the production. Another vendor creates an asset, it goes to the production, it comes back down to the other vendor. It really is tying all of that together in a way that I don't think we've seen that much before. There's a few productions who are really pushing this, but I think we're pushing it a little farther than most of them before, and it's partly because we have access to this pretty much unlimited cloud storage, because this cloud storage company happens to also own a production company.
Yes.
So it, we kind of tie it together.
I think we can.
I would say I've worked on something like that before, and it gets really complicated when you have new projects starting up, because there's a massive amount of customization with each vendor separately, and then the new project starts up, you have different vendors, and it's just a freaking nightmare.
Yeah, this is one show, one very big, very long, drawn out show.
Yeah,
So
so
it's easy, but if they decide to use this as a model for another production, it says, well, how much can we take it on this one and spin it up on production number 2,
right.
and bring that,
But this is
what we did, and
But this is instant, right? Like this would just be there for everybody that was using it.
yeah, I mean, if there actually is a central thing, but then right now everybody has to build their own,
Right.
and I mean, this will be built around this one production studio, and it might be that they'll be able to reuse it in a literally, rather than just cloning it, just open it up and make it now available to another production and more studios, and to the point where all the VFX vendors are all tied into this one central platform at this one studio, and when you do work with them, you've got to tie into this platform and use their delivery tools, and you use their reception tool or ingest tools, and everything all works magically happy together. But that I don't know. I mean, right now we're only dealing with a couple of large vendors that have big pipeline teams.
Yeah, I've seen it work. I was gonna say you need lots of people to beta test.
Yeah, I think so. Okay. From also like we've seen a lot of microservice architectures, right? Where one of the things that we have looked at, where if you architecture microservices from startup, not only you can actually build, like you were mentioning, collaborative, multi-studio, multi-hybrid cloud, or multi-cloud kind of environments. But what you can also do when you go up to like higher sensitive content tiers, where the content can leave environments, you can, if you have an architecture that's microservice oriented, you can kind of move it into a cloud environments where the actual data user owns their instance, and you can kind of bring it there rather than, so you don't have to sell like the whole application, but you can just sell parts of it that does part, like maybe transcoding, or that does watermarking, or whatever the microservices you have. So not only from a perspective of architecture that you are getting, it's portable, but you're also getting security, because if you can just give them the microservices and instantiate in their cloud, and then have data being stored in either their own cloud or centralized cloud services, so if you are a post-production company that does one part or one piece, you can process and compute in your own instance, and then you can put the data into a shared instance, or instance where they own the keys, and the data gets encrypted and put back. So from a cloud architecture point of view, I mean, microservice is like a no-brainer, right? Because not only you are making things portable, you're making things more accessible, and you can lock down things into people's owners of the cloud themselves, rather than you have to worry about owning it and producing it and kind of like running it all day to day. You can just give it to them.
Well, I'd like to kind of take a slight counterpoint to that, in that I think I know what potential show you're talking about, and the advantage that they have is, since they do own the production company, they don't have to deal with anybody else's requirements. So they can say, it's going to run on our cloud, this is how it's going to be architected, and we'll design how we need it to run for our purposes. Most content creators or content contributors don't have that luxury. So AWS, who's setting this up, they can dictate those mandates and say anybody who wants to touch this set of content is going to go through our gateway, and they're going to do it our way or the highway. But let's say it was somebody like Netflix, who they have their own way of doing shows. Disney, any of the big content generators, they have to look at it more in a somewhat more agnostic model, because they need to be able to port content to different places. They need to be able to support a lot of different organizations that are going to be doing that. So I think it might be a little bit misleading to look at how something has to be done for a completely vertically integrated stack like that versus what everybody else in the world has.